Hello and welcome back. Today I am going to be doing a one color challenge or one marker challenge, except I'm a digital artist so I don't have markers. Instead, what I did was I went onto a random hex color generator. Are they called hex numbers? I'm not sure. I went on a website that generated a random color for you, and I used that instead. I did kind of cheat out a little bit, but it's in the same way that you could cheat in a one marker challenge, by layering. And if you're using alcohol-based markers, you can use rubbing alcohol to lighten it up, I guess. So I did kind of cheat like that. I used some low opacity layers, some low opacity brushes, and some special blending mode layers to try and make this stand out just a little bit, because the color I picked was not exactly the easiest color to use. I don't hate it. But this initially did not start out as a one color challenge kind of thing. I was going to be doing a collab with another YouTuber. They still colored my line work, so if you want to see that, I will put a link in the description or in the iCard. If you want to go see what they did with my line art. But I thought, because I was going to give this to somebody to color, I should make it kind of complicated, so they have a lot of options and it's kind of a challenge. But not like a full background, right? And I wanted it to be something that was very much up to interpretation. So I thought, what's something that has a lot of variation in color? And the first thing I thought of was flowers. Flowers come in almost any color. And so I figured if I drew a person with some flowers surrounding them, some flower petals, that could lend itself to any number of color palettes and still be really interesting looking, still not be like super out there kind of strange. I think they were supposed to be daisies, but they don't really end up looking like daisies, I suppose, because daisies don't really come to a sharp point, do they? I don't know that much about flowers, so you'll have to excuse me for that. But I'm actually really proud about how this line work turned out. I think it turned out great. So when the collab kind of fell through, I thought I would use it for my own purposes, because I already recorded it anyway. This initial part, the sketch and the line art, took me about an hour to complete. So while it was a complicated-ish drawing, it wasn't the most complicated I've ever done. I also wasn't really trying to make anything look super duper realistic like I would have been in more recent drawings, like the Fox in the Forest one, or in the A Silent Voice speed painting. I was really trying to go for realism there, but this I wanted something that, could be very much up to interpretation, and I end up doing a pretty hard cell shade. And usually I tone down my cell shading, but I ended up having to really go for it in this one because I needed that contrast. Getting contrast without contrasting colors and not really being able to darken the color necessarily. Because I can lighten the color by using lower opacity, but I could only darken the color by using layers on top of layers on top of layers, which I did end up doing for some areas like the background and some of the shading. But it was really a challenge to get that contrast. Without the color contrast, you have to do lightness and darkness contrast, texture contrast, maybe. So I don't really know what I was thinking with this character exactly. I wasn't looking at any kind of reference. I didn't exactly have a specific set of traits or something in my head, but I don't know, maybe she's something like a Forest Witch. Some kind of magic user, I don't know. She's got that flower on her eye. Again, not a daisy, too pointy. Now I'm just adding this big old circle in the background because I'm thinking ahead, because this is a collab. I'm like, okay, this would probably be an easy way to contrast, because I don't know what this person's style was really like at this point. So I finally go in with this color. It's not the color that I was hoping it would be. I was kind of hoping for a yellow, but I think in terms of how bad it could be, green's not terrible considering it's flowers, right? But it immediately off the bat made it harder because it's not any kind of natural color or a color that I can pass off as natural, not even for like her skin tone or her lips. So immediately she starts looking like some sort of like swamp fairy? I don't know. But immediately I'm like, okay, this is harder than I thought it was. The darkest color, the most saturated, the most natural color is her hair. That's the color that I picked. Things like her skin, her lips, the background, they're either layers on low opacity or the background is, I believe, the background is, I think, a hard light layer. I do a couple overlays on the very, very back part to try and make it darker, because in my head, that's the darkest part. And again, to try and get that contrast, I'm thinking she needs heavy shadows, because otherwise I'm not sure how I can really make this pop. And for the most part, I'm actually okay with like how her skin is looking, how the shading is looking. I think it's really coming along to look dimensional, which is kind of difficult when you only have the one color. You don't really, think about how much complexity is in shadows until your shadows are a color that's completely weird, like green. You don't see a lot of green shadows out there. But I'm giving her just a really hard light coming from the right hand side. And one of the harder things to do was her hair, because since it was that natural green color, I really wanted to draw attention to it, because that's the color that this drawing is supposed to be based off of, right? But I also wanted it to look like dimensional and soft, so out of all of the shading, I think I spent the most time on the hair. Also just because, like, I don't know, something about the green was really throwing me off. I'm like, this just doesn't look like hair. It looks weird, it looks wrong. So I used some soft brushes, I used some harder brushes to try and just make it work, make it look consistent, make it not look like seaweed, I suppose. And in the end, I'm actually really, really happy with the way it turned out. I think it's got some dimensionality to it, but it doesn't look like I'm trying to make it look super realistic. So I go in and I redefine the edges of the shading a little bit, make it look a bit softer, because right now it is all hard light. And I'm not saying like, it didn't look okay, but I feel like there still would be a little bit of softness to the edges of the shadows, because she is made up of round shapes. The thing that I think really brought it together is what I'm doing now. I'm erasing the parts of the lowest part of her hair, which gives her light areas of the hair as well as dark areas, which is what I was lacking when I was trying to color it before. I needed some of those light areas because the color of the hair was already kind of dark. I needed some highlights, but I wasn't allowed to use white, so I just erased. I thought I'd try adding a little bit of dimensionality to the circle behind her head by making it a kind of gradient without cheating and using a gradient. I tried really, really hard to stick to the rules. I do feel like I was playing it a little bit fast and loose, but maybe if this was like paints or markers, I would be able to get all these tones. I don't know, maybe I'm just a giant cheater, who knows? But I was trying to add some dimension to the flowers. It was a little weird to make them green. I thought about making them white, but then they just sort of stood out too much. So they are green, which is a little strange, I suppose. I went and made the background a little bit darker because, again, I'm really trying to make her pop. And then I erased some of the parts of the flowers to give them highlights as well. I gave her some more freckles because I kind of regret making her freckles black. I feel like they definitely should have been the dark green color. And then I'm adding this like textured, I don't know what that's called, the center of the flower. It looks kind of seedy almost. Again, I'm not a flower expert. I thought maybe I would throw on some texture to her shirt because it didn't have a lot of it, and that's basically it done. So let me know how successful you think I was in using the one color, if this was totally cheating or not. Because I feel like it might have been a little bit cheating. I was just doing some finishing touches and it's done. There you go. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, consider liking, consider subscribing, and have a lovely day and all that jazz.